Hello everyone, and welcome to this special WORKTECH webinar in partnership with Condeco. It's part of a year-long program of research and communication during 2021 called Condeco Conversations. My name is Jeremy Myerson. I'm Director of WORKTECH Academy, and I'm also the Helen Hamlin Chair of Design at the Royal College of Art. And it's my privilege to be chairing and steering our conversation today. We've got a great panel lined up, and I'm going to introduce them in a minute, and a great discussion in store. But first, a little bit of context. Globally, in office real estate, we've reached an interesting, indeed pivotal moment amid the pandemic. Evidence from around the WORKTECH Academy network suggests companies are now beginning to move away from dealing with short-term crisis to planning longer-term workplace strategies. They are forging new pathways out of the pandemic. So the central question of Condeco Conversations is this: what are the routes to revival? It's a simple question, but it's also a very complicated one. What we've learned through our research is that the sudden switch to remote working has damaged some aspects of organizational life more than others. Focus work, for example, has hardly suffered in the home, but the ability to learn from and innovate with colleagues definitely has. Organizations have told us that learning, especially over-the-shoulder mentoring and informal training, and creative innovation and ideation have been among the biggest casualties of COVID-19. In this webinar, we're terming such activities as higher value interpersonal work. And we're asking why this type of work is so important and how organizations can rebuild innovation and learning in the workplace. To address this issue, we've got three experts on the front line of change, and I'd like to introduce them all now. We have Sophie Bollier, Property Asset Manager of Global Estates at the British Council. Marie McDermott, Global Projects Director at the law firm Dentons, and Simon Cohen, Global Partner Director at Condeco. So welcome to our panel, and let me start with you, Marie. Tell us a little bit about your role. Tell us about Dentons and your role and some of the obstacles that you've been facing during the pandemic.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, as the largest law firm in the world, you can imagine one of the challenges that the pandemic brought about quite immediately was a lack of ability to get people together. And that had always been, I think, a hallmark of the firm. We were used to mobilizing our partners en masse, for example, normally once every 18 months, getting them together by practice, by sector, by theme, by client, in order to have both structured sessions, but those sort of informal get-togethers that trigger new business, that trigger ideas. So in the absence of all of that and all of those, fantastic water cooler connections, how could we, be agile? How could we be nimble, given that we had business services and legal professionals scattered literally all over the world? The firm really went into overdrive, and I credit our leadership with having the foresight to really think about, unique and innovative ways to get people together. So literally, as soon as the pandemic hit, we were setting up global town halls just to, I guess, test the pulse of the pandemic, understand what was going on, and assess what impact that would have on the way that we were working. And of course, the impact it was going to have on our clients, because we had to be sympathetic, not just to our talent, but the needs of our clients as well. And from that, I think arose a wave of structured touch points. So global team connects, where we would be accustomed to getting together, for example, as a global team, but actually knocking us into random breakout groups where we might get to speak to a colleague who we may have rubbed shoulders with had we been visiting their office, but we certainly wouldn't encounter them in the virtual scenario we were facing. And without agenda then, throwing people together just to chat, to check in, see how they were, what were they working on. So quite a non-work related agenda, actually. So a lot of the, I guess, emphasis of that was trying to recreate that informal contact that we all lost, I think, as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that the conventional view of a large international law firm is junior lawyers learning informally over the shoulder of senior partners. And coming out of the pandemic now, you've got a situation where how are you going to engineer that? Because there is likely, with a hybrid model, to be less frequent and predictable attendance at an office. Is this something that's on your radar?
It's something that the junior lawyers were quite vocal about, because they felt immediately that they were missing out on sort of those natural sponsorship and mentorship opportunities that come from just eavesdropping a more senior lawyer, being in their room or being in close proximity to them, and I guess absorbing knowledge by osmosis. So it sounds a little bit sort of stalker oriented, but we did engineer sort of digital virtual voyeur sessions where literally a junior lawyer could virtually follow someone else through a client meeting. We would invite sort of a lot of silent listeners to Zoom calls with clients, again, just so some of that learning could take place. But in addition to that, we've had to build out more formal mentoring programs. Now, mentoring's always existed, I think, in the law firm context and indeed other professional contexts, but we had to take that a step further. So making it more formal, having workshops where the mentors got together and shared best practices at how they were delivering mentor support services virtually, and also support workshops for the mentees. How could they really extract the value of what was being offered to them digitally? And those sessions have been quite helpful. I'm on the mentor program, and I've learned a great deal about how to deliver virtually, particularly when you can't read people's verbal cues as well across Zoom and other methods of communication. That's
fascinating. I'd like to bring in Sophie Bollier, and really a very different organisation, the British Council. Sophie, tell us about your role within the British Council and the challenges that you've been facing.
So I am part of a global estate, and I work mainly with the international estate. So British Council is the cultural and educational organisation for United Kingdom. We are a charity, but we also have some grant aid funded from the FCDO. And we do lots of different activities like teaching face-to-face. We manage exam for organization. We do lots of different projects. We have probably 50 projects a year, from architecture, art, education. We have, I think it's 9,000 people across the world in like 300 premises. And I think there are two sides. There is the support back office, which for years, I think we started the journey to flexible working in 2000. So we were quite ready. The day the pandemic arrived, we just all moved into our house, and we continue like as usual for most of people. Teaching was a little more tricky. We were not ready in terms of digital content. We did believe in face-to-face. And I quite like, when I read the report that was produced and the benefits of face-to-face, yes, I think in teaching, British Council did believe that was very important. But the reality is people, event or time, people don't have time to travel. If they travel for a reason, to go to the office or to learn. So I think things are going to evolve. We are moving to definitely more digital engagement. Exam, that has moved quite quickly. Teaching for adult, teaching for children will stay face-to-face. The challenge for the future, I think, is we had probably 25% of people working flexibly. We are moving to 50% probably. So our estate is too big. We need to think innovative ways of using the estate. It could be we reduce the estate. We need to reduce our costs anyway. So yes, we are going to really think very carefully, what do people want to do when they come to the office, collaborate, learn from each other, and then when they have to do concentrate work, they will do it at home. So it would be a very different offer in the office, different design. And we are also thinking of even using our office in different ways, maybe for even to run exam, for example, because as people can maybe not work from the office 3 days, 4 days a week, maybe we can. So there are lots going on. I think we are at the beginning of a strategy. We are a next tranche of strategy until 2025. And it's a lot about quality digital engagement, reduce footprint, and any innovative way of seeing the future.
Well, that's a very interesting picture. And of course, the British Council is renowned internationally for being innovative and also being engaged in learning as a learning organization. And of course, flexibility is part of your DNA. You've always had flexible working, but I can sense an acceleration. If I could bring in Simon Cohen of Condeco, another kind of innovation-led company, obviously a commercial company, but priding yourself on innovation, writing new software, developing new products. What's happening inside your organization? How have you coped with the pandemic, and where are you heading now?
It's interesting that you use the word DNA, Jeremy, in talking about innovation, because as a technology company, that's what we are. It's literally in our blood. And when the whole world started working from home just over a year ago, 15 months ago, that was a real challenge for a company that wants to continue to learn and innovate. And we also existed in for us, what was a very changing market. We supply software that helps people find space in offices, and offices were suddenly closed, and the way that office space is being used is different, and we could see that coming. So we had a very, very fast learning process to understand what was going on within our market, and then feeding that into a development team largely based in India, a product team based in the UK that had to work together and collaborate and create the magic and the future product that we would then take to market. So yeah, some unique challenges which I think we adapted to very well, and things such as sort of hackathons, virtually bringing our technology teams together to plan and innovate and create new products and functionality. But also on the learning side, I remember the UK sales team were having literally daily meetings every day to share and pool knowledge. It was sort of 8:30 every single morning to share and pool knowledge, as that we'd normally do, sort of sitting around a desk in the office and talk to each other about what we're hearing and what customers are saying to us, and what the market is telling us. But that had to happen virtually, and I think you make it work. You have to make the best of it. But as the WORKTECH Condeco white paper on innovation and learning very well points out, there is no substitute for face-to-face collaboration.
Yeah. Just to mention, Simon has helpfully and Sophie mentioned an ebook which all participants in this webinar will be receiving. It's called Supporting Learning and Innovation, Routes to Revival in Returning to the Office. It's interesting that we have different challenges, but overlapping challenges in the three organizations we're spotlighting today. I'd like to bring up our first poll and get our panelists to comment on the results. So this is your chance to participate. We could have our first poll on the screen. So this is what we're asking is, what is the biggest challenge facing your organization currently? Is it staff lacking leadership, training and mentoring? Weaker innovation, idea generation in remote teams? Is it a dip in employee morale and well-being? Or is it problems with digital connectivity and digital equality? So this is your chance to vote. And when the results are in, I hope they'll be conveyed to me so we can comment on them. So let me return to Marie, and let's talk very specifically at higher value interpersonal work. This is something that we did a survey of corporate real estate opinion around the world, and we found that this higher value interpersonal work kept coming up again and again. And is this something that you've tried prior to the pandemic to do more things flexibly, or have you relied on the office to kind of host these things? What was your thinking before the pandemic, and how has your thinking changed since?
Well, I think we were fortunate enough to be in a position where we could engineer meetings of different people. We could engineer collaboration space, whether it was in the office or whether it was offsite. And obviously a lot of our most successful, I guess, innovation sessions were those when we took people out of the office and we, shook the scenario up such that thinking could be free. And of course, now the office has to be used in a different way. It's being used discreetly by small groups starting to return to the office in some of our geographies. But the problem is we have to make sure it is kind of digitally inclusive, because great ideas, as we're all aware, come from everywhere. So how do you make sure that everyone has a place in the room when it's part actual and it's part virtual? And I know that probably all of us on this call have been on some awful Zoom calls where we're trying to connect people who are in offices physically with those who are still at home or perhaps working on, from different locations. And the results have been, very, very mixed. I know technology is coming along in leaps and bounds to be able to better accommodate that, and that will be great. But I think as organizations, we have to be a lot more creative in terms of who we encourage to go to the office and when, and indeed what the space needs to look like when they get there to accommodate the tasks that they have. So the office is no longer being used as much for one-on-one focus work. That can be done at home without interruptions. And a lot of our people have commented that they feel more productive at home. But what they wish to go to the office for is to have that social interaction and to have the opportunity to brainstorm, to workshop, to project plan, and to put brains together in an actual room, which just creates that spark, which can lead often to the best ideation.
So it's a very interesting time, especially there's been an acceleration of investment in new technology, and lawyers have been particularly targeted. There are some artificial intelligence which they say can go through a contract and spot the problems in a legal contract of several hundred pages faster than a junior clerk or early stage lawyer can do. I mean, are you looking at investment in new technologies and those kinds of things? Is AI coming into the story here?
It's a great question. And we were lucky that some years ago, I think we recognized that the delivery of legal services was changing fundamentally, and it would never be the same again, and that technology was going to play a huge part in it. The role of the lawyer will never be obsolete, but there were many functions, as you rightly say, Jeremy, that can be performed by technology, and things can be organized more efficiently so that the client gets more value, gets more service, but at a lower cost, and delivered from the right person or bot, as the case may be. So we did a lot of disaggregation of our legal services to determine what should be outsourced, what should stay in-house, and if it stayed in-house, what level of lawyer ought to be delivering those services, and then try to put everything back together so the client got the best value for each individual piece of the legal process. So we set up a company called Next Law Labs, which was investing in legal tech a number of years ago. And, thankfully that has had some great successes. I think the problem we faced as the pandemic evolved was that a lot of these great pieces of legal tech were there, but were woefully underutilized. So they're only really being tapped into by a very small percentage of our clients and a very small percentage of our lawyers. So how did we bring the innovation out? How did we really make this accessible to everyone, whether they were tech savvy or not? How could we make it easy for our legal professionals and business services professionals to talk about legal tech and AI to clients? And that's when we set up, just before the pandemic, our Innovation Exchange, which is basically an online hub where all of our products, all of our new legal tech services, all of our innovation breaks, if you like, was recorded and documented, and people can go in and search either by practice or sector to see what tools were available, or just by what's new and what's hot, because often in innovation terms, people don't know what it is that they're looking for until they see it. And we do have a slide, which maybe we can share now or later, which just looks at the homepage of this innovation hub, which is really easy to browse. Again, very intuitive to follow, whether you're tech savvy or not. And it takes you through things like training and also how to articulate innovation to those who might feel that it's so complicated, it's just not for them. You can see on the slide that there's a couple of boxes that the user can click on. One is just to explore solutions. And again, you know, each of the lawyers has clients with different needs. And sometimes it's not easy to match the technology we have to a specific client need until you just browse through and have a look and see what's on offer. So this was all sort of made digitally easy in this space. And there was also a section on market intelligence. So, you know, what were other law firms doing? What were other professional services firms doing? What was the market doing generally in innovation terms, and what were the highlights such that we could keep our finger on the innovation pulse? And finally, and I think this was a big way that we were able to move the needle on this, innovation training. So training for all of the ranks of lawyers at Dentons and indeed business services professionals in terms of what innovation actually means, demystifying it, making it easy to sell into clients, making it easy to explain, and actually just showing how listening to a client articulating a challenge or a problem is the first part in the ideation route. Then you can brainstorm with the client, you know, ways to solve that particular challenge, be it through legal tech or otherwise. So quite a lot of investment went into this hub. It's updated daily and refreshed. And it's not just for those who are classically immersed in innovation, our innovation stars, our innovation project managers. It's literally for everyone at Denton. So it tries to make innovation accessible to everyone.
Interesting, very interesting. We've had the results of our first poll. The poll is closed. Interesting results. What is the biggest challenge facing your organization currently? The winner, just under 40%, was a dip in employee morale and well-being. People over 20%, 21% staff lacking leadership training and mentoring, and a quarter of you feel that weaker innovation and idea generation in remote teams. So the challenges are pretty well evenly spread. Only 14% said problems with digital connectivity and digital equality. This is making sure people who are physically present in meetings and virtually present have the same experience. So employee morale and well-being. Sophie, what do you make of that result? What would you have voted for? No,
I think well-being is important, and to. At first, yes, it's great to work remotely and from home, but it has lots of issues. And I have worked the last 15 years mainly from home, but I learned to actually be quite organized, go to run in the morning, first thing in the morning, try to be active, because you get stuck into your computer and it's difficult to make the difference between your work and your life. So, like anything, it can be great, but you have to be careful. You hear more and more people with having back problem and different things that are serious. And yeah, there are people that if they need more social interaction because maybe they live on their own, or they are younger, or they are. So yes, I think the well-being is something to think. And I think a lot of organizations are rethinking their office offer in that way. And what else can we offer to our staff when they come, and what are the plus they will get?
I think that well-being, and there is evidence that employees, the longer they've worked, there was a honeymoon period of working from home, and then we went over the hill, and productivity began to dip. People are working longer hours. They're suffering from video call fatigue. Zombies is the term. But it's interesting in the poll survey, weaker innovation, 25% of people, that's the biggest challenge in their organization. Now, if you take the British Council, I know from working at the British Council myself, with the British Council, you do an awful lot around Sophie, you do a lot around innovation, ideation. How have you managed that through the pandemic? And what are your teams telling you about the British Council in terms of how you're going to organize things going forward on the innovation front?
But there are things where, I don't know, in the last 8 months, for example, in exam, in the exam sector, we used to run mainly exam through papers, and in really a few months everybody worked in UK, overseas, examiner, our estate team, to develop some solution to move into computer-based exam, remote, and we are very close now to run exam with the student being at home, for example. So all this is based on a lot of different technology, a lot of training, as Mary was saying. And yes, and the same, we are going to need to do some more investment in teaching to achieve the same thing, because you need to develop product and system and to deliver quality digital solution. But yeah, like you say in your report, sometimes it's easier when you're all in the same place to come up with solution. Saying this, the British Council has been for a long time now international with dispersed team. I think our estate team, where probably the core is 30 people, and we are in 12 different countries. So most of the time we are not together. We used to meet maybe 2 or 3 times a year and having a week together. And now we do like what you do with WORKTECH. We do a virtual 3 days. And we achieve quite a lot. What we miss is the dinner at night and the break time where other things happen. But
that's interesting. We're going to go to our second poll now. So we could have our second poll up, and we're going to, after that, have very quickly our third poll. And these are very specific questions. So the next one is, what is the state of learning in your organization? You've got 3 options. Training and mentoring is being addressed in hybrid way. We're struggling to maintain learning remotely, or we have successfully managed learning online. So please, could you all vote? Also, we have a Q&A facility. You can put comments and questions in the Q&A. We're going to be taking some as they come through, and the team backstage here are going to forward me your questions and comments, and we'll weave those into the narrative. So that's the state of learning in your organization. You're addressing it in a hybrid way, or you're struggling, or you've successfully managed it. So let's see what you say on that. And then when we close the poll, we're going to open another poll. And this is poll 3. And the same really for innovation activities. How have innovation activities been affected in your organization? Got 3 options. We've continued to innovate effectively online. We've struggled to maintain innovation remotely, or we're looking at hybrid approaches to manage innovation. So those are the 3 options. So if you could vote on those and And when the results are in and I've got them, we'll discuss them. I'm going to go over to Simon now. And were you voting? Put you on the spot here, Simon. Were you voting in terms of where your own organization is at? How do you think you're coping with on the state of learning in the organization?
Yeah, I think we've coped reasonably well. Pre-pandemic, we invested in technology to enable online learning and remote learning, and it's just been it's thoroughly well used over the last year. And there's regular online learning. Some of it is mandatory, and some of it is optional courses that are provided on a platform, which could be live or could be recorded and then consuming it in your own time. I think that we've done a good job with with our online learning, but I think the bit that we probably, and I think that everyone probably struggles with, is that more, informal learning. And Jeremy, you mentioned it earlier, I think when you were talking to Marie, that the learning on the job, the shadowing, the mentoring and monitoring of other people. I think you lose out a little bit on that. But in terms of the more formal learning, I think Condeco's done a pretty good job on that.
And what about innovation? Because you absolutely, Simon, in Condeco, they say that software is eating the world, but software depends on, high degrees of innovation at speed. Is the lack of physical proximity, has that been a problem?
It could have been a problem, but it wasn't. And I think over the course of about 6 weeks last year, when we realized that our market, that our customers were changing in the way that they were using their buildings and using technology, we had a sort of a very frantic learning and consolidating of information, and that then sort of feeding through into product and what can we build and what can we create, and then through feeding into our marketing department on how does our story change. I think we did a good job with that. And would it have been better if we were all in a room? Maybe, but I think we did very well in terms of innovation in solving our own and our customer problems at the time.
We've got the results of poll 2 are in. Poll 2, what's the state of learning in your organization? Interestingly, training and mentoring being addressed in a hybrid way. Nearly half of you, 48%. Only 20% say you're struggling, and 32% say you've successfully managed it online. So really, 80% of you are really in a reasonably good place with that, which is absolutely fascinating. And if I just go to poll 3, innovation activities, again, hybrid approaches for innovation. 3/4 of you say hybrid approaches. That's how that's what you're looking at to manage innovation, and I think that's borne out by our conversation. Only 17% say you're struggling, and 17% say you're innovating effectively online. So quite a different set of results there. On the innovation side, people are probing, they're thinking about the future, they're a bit more tentative, they're a bit less bullish on the innovation front and they're looking at hybrid approaches. On the learning approach, 8% of you are in a good place with it. So that's a very, very interesting set of results. Marie, what do you make of those results? Are you surprised at the difference between learning and innovation?
I'm a little bit surprised. I guess that if I were a gambling woman, I might have said that innovation would have been a lot lower and it might have suffered more. And I think it just is testament to the fact that, organizations have really had to look at supporting our minds during the pandemic. So, for example, they realize that good ideas and thinking efficiency comes from resilience. And I know a lot of organizations have done a lot of investment during the pandemic on things like mindfulness, exercise programs, virtual yoga, training scenarios that focus on things like boosting your mental stamina during the pandemic, really addressing the things that have made many of us so weary and feel quite detached from our organizations and our brief. And I think a lot of organizations have done what Denton's did, which is, restate and re-emphasize the strategy. Because whilst we were working against the backdrop of the pandemic, the strategy didn't change. We still had to deliver on that. And in fact, in many regards, we had to accelerate on various facets of our strategy. So, I've seen many organizations, not just Denton's, really do extraordinary things during the pandemic, launch new offices virtually, launch new service lines virtually. And we've proved to ourselves that we can do it. And I think that success during the pandemic has spurred innovation on maybe to a different level.
That's very, that's quite insightful, the way that you've framed that. We're getting questions in from our participants in this webinar. And there's an interesting one here from Barbara, which says, I read in several polls that about 20 to 25% of people prefer to do concentration work in the office for several reasons. What are your experiences? In my opening remarks, I said that focus work could be done at home, and I think, Sophie, you mentioned it as well. Why do some people want to be in the office to get their head down? Maybe the home is too too congested and contested. What do you make of that, Sophie?
No. In our team, we have young people with young children, and I can see some people are really very keen in going back to the office. You have some people that started to work during the pandemic. They actually know nobody. They have never meet people face to face, or they. I think there will always be a balance of different solutions. Probably just the percentage is changing now, but some people would prefer to come to the office to work. Yeah.
What do you make of that, Simon? I think some people come into the office, don't they? Even if they're not working with somebody, the sight of other people working makes them sit down and do some concentrated work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting statistic that Barbara raised, and I probably agree with Sophie in that for a lot of people the distractions are there at home and they can't get their head down and focus. And maybe at the moment when offices are quiet, you get the opportunity to go in there and you have a lot of space for yourself and less distractions. I wonder if that statistic, if that research will be the same in 6 months when, please God, there'll be a lot more of us back in the offices.
Yeah, we'll keep your questions coming and they'll come through to me. Any questions and comments, we'd be very happy to field them. I'm going to stay with you, Simon, and move on to specifically technology. Because I know that at Condeco, the team, talking to Peter Otto and the other R&D people, you're always scanning the horizon for new technologies and looking at how they might relate to place and behavior and so on. What have you seen out there? What are you looking at, and how has technology been deployed, especially in trying to plug the gaps in higher value interpersonal work?
And I think I'll start with the obvious, right? If this pandemic had happened 10, 15 years ago, when we didn't have video easily accessible on our laptops, or if we didn't have high-speed internet going to our houses, if there wasn't cloud technology readily available, where almost every single application that we use to do our job is based in the cloud and accessible from anywhere, sort of technology has kept businesses going, and admittedly at different extents for different types of businesses, but for most organizations, technology has kept our businesses alive. I know for hospitality and events and some industries it's been a lot harder, but technology has sort of saved us in many ways, and that was really what was happening in the early part of the pandemic last year, where laptops were being rushed out to support any member of staff that was going to, which eventually became everyone working from home. And that's probably the biggest piece in terms of innovation and learning and collaboration in general. Seeing the faces of your colleagues and being able to work with them rather than just at the end of a phone or an email. In terms of what we're seeing customers do and where we see things going, it's very much focused around the user, the employee, and their experience in the office. And I think that employers have a responsibility to, not just with technology, but with people and process as well, to create an office and an environment that is as attractive and welcoming as possible. So that when employees start coming back into the office, it's a place that they want to go to and not that they have to go to. And obviously people and process are part of that, but technology plays a major part. And I'm not just talking about the scheduling from our side of things, of finding are my colleagues in the office, is there a desk for me, and is there a meeting room? But it's all of the elements that tie together to make that great experience, whether it's visitor management or access control systems or wayfinding or sensors. All of these are coming together. We're seeing our customers bringing these things together to create great experiences for employees and for visitors, so that when finally we get to go back to the office, it's we enjoy it, and that technology is an enabler and not a barrier to that.
That's quite a neat way of putting it. We've got plenty of comments coming through. This is from Nicola Lai, who to answer the earlier point, she makes a comment about why people go into an office to do concentrated work. She says, I think that it definitely depends on an individual's home situation. For myself, I live alone. I get so much more work done than the times I went into the office. In the office, it was more distracting for me. It was hard to focus without being interrupted. There's a very interesting question, a follow-on question, which says, and I'm going to direct this one to you, Marie, do you think that in some instances, remote working is actually better for innovation, having a focused and time-conscious group meeting to achieve innovation? So that's an interesting take, isn't it?
It is an interesting take, and I think, having sat through a couple of weeks ago some of our innovation training, it was quite good because we could see each other. So, Zoom, I think, has revolutionized virtual conferencing, because if everyone is obliged to put cameras on, and if you agree at the beginning cameras will be on, you can see if people are engaged, you can see if they're focused, you can see if they're paying attention and they're not multitasking and doing emails. Frankly, in many of our leadership meetings where we would get together, actually we'd be in boardroom set up and everyone would have the laptop open in front of them, and that we'd be talking ostensibly to one another, but everyone would be mired in the inbox. So I think people realize now that focus is probably the key word here. So whether that's in the office where it suits you better and there are no distractions there because you can escape family life, or whether it's at home because actually there you don't have people knocking on your office door or walking by and perhaps peppering you with questions. It's the individual's, stance on what is best for them, what helps them focus. And if you can harness that and then get people together, things start to stick and things start to gel. So, over the past year, 18 months, if I look back on the way I've engaged with our firm, some of our best ideas have probably poured out during the pandemic, definitely. I think in terms of execution of some of our major transformation initiatives, I can see how it's hurt them not being able to get people together, and that projects have run into difficulty just because that human connection has been missing. So there isn't one size fits all. I guess that would be my final take on this, but for sure, I have seen some fantastic examples of sharp focus done in a virtual setting.
For me, and I, with WORKTECH Academy and the Royal College of Art, we get involved in a lot of innovation activity. For me, there are some short, sharp innovation activities which actually do work well virtually because you're time delineated and people are very focused. But then you have in the face-to-face, you have these random, unpredictable, it's fairly intuitive aside and digressions and, off-beam conversations that do create innovation. I think we're going to have our final poll now. If you could bring up our final poll. This is about your organization's technology plans regarding innovation and learning. So there are 3 options to vote. We've already implemented a new approach with new technology. We are planning to invest in this area in the near future, or we have yet to be convinced of the business case. So, Sophie, from a British Council point of view, if you were answering this poll, where do you think the British Council is at in terms of technology and your plan?
I think for the back office function, we were quite ready, I think we at the minute we have the tools we need to work together. As I said, for example, on teaching, we need to invest on digital product and more probably training that depends for which part of the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting that I'm really thinking about the back office and how British Council teams, which are putting together programs and exhibitions, their investment in technology. And I think probably you're planning to invest is probably the option you would go for. Simon, what are your enterprise clients telling you? What questions are they asking as they contemplate investment? Going on a digital journey, as it were.
Yeah, it's interesting because this digital journey has been going on for 10 years or more for many organizations in terms of transformation, in terms of digitizing processes. And really the last year or so has just accelerated that. But despite that, we do see a mix. I'm really interested to see the results of the poll, actually, because we do see a mix of organisations that have been proactive, that know that office life is going to be different in the future, and are anticipating that change and planning for it. And nobody knows exactly what's coming and how many people are going to return to the office and what collaboration and innovation is going to look like in the future. But there are many organisations that are already planning for that change, and there are plenty that are still let's wait and see. And actually, when are we going to get back into the office, and how many are going to be back into the office, and are hesitant for good reason. So, yeah, very interested in seeing the results there, Jeremy.
Yeah, well, we're all agog. We're just waiting for them, and I'm sure they will arrive. I just want to flag up the report that you're going to be receiving as part of the Condeco Conversations program this year. It's called Supporting Learning and Innovation, Routes to Revival and Returning to the Office. And it looks particularly at who's doing well with learning and innovation, what are the challenges they've overcome, and why it's important. And I think each of you in your own way have articulated the importance of this. And it remains for me to give you the results of the final poll. They're very, very interesting. 55% of our poll are planning to invest in this area in the near future. So I get the sense that we're on the foothills for kind of big digital change. A healthy 35% are saying we've already implemented a new approach with new technology. And only 10% say we've yet to be convinced of the business case. So 90% of you are either there or heading in a new direction. And I think that's a very interesting result. So what I'd like to do is to go around each of our panelists just to make a couple of closing remarks, maybe responding to the results of this final survey. And we'll do it in reverse order. So Simon, what did you make of that?
Yeah, very interesting on the results, and good to see that 90% have either done something or are on that journey. It doesn't surprise me, and I think those that haven't been convinced will be shortly. Just one final thing to say on when you get the opportunity to read the report, there's some fascinating stuff in there. One thing that I picked up, which I found really interesting, and Jeremy, I apologize if I get the numbers wrong, but I think that you said that on any given day, your chances of interacting with somebody are about 80% if everybody is in the office. Yeah. If you're down to 2 days a week in the office, you're down, was it 12%? I think 12% chance of
12%,
meeting someone, which basically means that those interactions, those water cooler moments, those having lunch together in the canteen are just so unlikely to happen. And I think for learning and innovation to get back to what it was, I think we've all done, lots of us have done a very good job with the online innovation, the online learning. But actually, to get back to full capacity there, we need to be back into the office in some shape or form, and meeting our colleagues again, because we're not seeing them as often, and we need to have individuals need to have a strategy, organizations need to have a strategy to how to enable that and get people together.
Yeah, this is research by George Washington University and Cushman and Wakefield. The chances of encountering a specific colleague in the workplace is around 88% when there's no remote working, and only 12% when there's 3 days or more.
Yes. And 12% if you're only in the office 2 days a week means you get to see everybody about once a month.
Yeah.
So,
I'm grateful to you for flagging that insight up. Sophie, final comments from you, your big takeout from this subject.
I think, yes, you can definitely, as we say, be innovative, progress, and having working group, achieving. But when you're in the office, you bump into different groups, and then that's where you can be even more creative. And I feel sometimes where we work today, it's a little different silo, and you don't. It's more difficult to cross-check what the others are doing and learn from this, probably.
Yeah, thank you. Anne-Marie.
I'm really enthusiastic to note that I think organizations are embracing digital transformation, and those that perhaps were just embarking on their journeys or planning to take a slower route through their journeys have really firmly pressed the accelerator. But I think I'm also impressed from some of the survey results to note that organizations are clearly looking at other things that are important as well to drive innovation, like a focus on EQ, bringing the next generation of leaders up to be very mindful of people's personal circumstance. I think if nothing else, the pandemic has made us see one another as humans as well as business professionals. We've had snapshots of dogs and children and all sorts of chaos at home. So we've had a window on one another's world, which I think has been fascinating. And I think it would be remiss of us if we didn't learn from the fact that actually being human is a good thing, and recognizing our humanity actually can make us better creative thinkers and better at innovation to support our organizational goals.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's a very important point to end on, that this focus on higher value interpersonal work is not just about IQ, it's also about EQ. Sadly, we've reached the end of our time. It's been a fascinating tour of this subject with three fantastic panelists who I'd like to thank. Sophie Bollier of British Council, Marie McDermott of Dentons, and Simon Cohen of Condeco. Thank you all very much for your insights. It remains for me to thank you, our participants, for engaging in our polls and our Q&A. I'd like to thank the Condeco technical team for mounting this webinar, and our team at WORKTECH for all their support, and WORKTECH Academy for developing the report. It's called, once again, Supporting Learning and Innovation, and you will receive a copy, I think, within the next 24 hours. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to welcoming you again to the next edition of Condeco Conversations. Bye-bye.